When the detective laid the bloody phone on my kitchen table, my hands started to shake. But it wasn't the phone that terrified me, it was knowing my daughter had already destroyed what was on it. And the worst part? I wasn't angry. I was proud. Before the murder, before the headlines, before the panic, we were just another quiet family living on the edge of Seattle, the Carsons. I was Elaine Carson, 42, a nurse who'd spent most of her life trying to keep people alive. My husband, Daniel, worked construction, the kind of man whose silence always filled a room. And our daughter, Sophie, was 16, sharp, restless, too smart for her own good. If you'd asked anyone in the neighborhood, they would have said we were normal. Maybe even boring. We hosted barbecues in the summer, sent Christmas cards on time, waved to our neighbors, even when we didn't like them much. But normalcy has a way of disguising what's brewing underneath, like a calm sea before a storm. Sophie and I were close. She had my dark hair, Daniel's intense eyes, and a streak of rebellion that was entirely her own. She wasn't one of those shy, obedient girls who spent afternoons doing homework and drinking iced coffee. No, Sophie liked late-night drives, sneaking out, pushing limits. She had a sharp wit and a tongue that could cut through any lie, even mine. Still, we were solid. Or at least, I believed we were. That illusion started to crack the night of the accident, though we didn't know it was murder then. It was a rainy Thursday, one of those nights when the sky looked bruised. Daniel was late getting home, and Sophie had locked herself in her room, claiming she was studying. I was cleaning up dinner when I heard tires screech outside. Sharp, desperate, wrong. When I ran out onto the porch, the street was empty, except for a faint metallic smell in the air. A few minutes later, a neighbor, Mr. Connors, came running down the block, shouting for someone to call 911. A body had been found behind the grocery store. That night blurred into sirens, flashing lights, and cold air that bit through my skin. We didn't know the victim, but the entire town was shaken. A 17-year-old boy, a classmate of Sophie's, had been found dead behind the dumpsters, his phone missing, his car abandoned 2 blocks away. Sophie barely reacted. She stood beside me, arms crossed, watching the commotion on TV like she was detached from it all. When I asked if she knew the boy, she shrugged. Everyone did. Tyler. He was kind of an idiot. Her tone unsettled me, but I brushed it off as shock. Teenagers have strange ways of processing grief, I told myself. The police started going door to door, asking questions, collecting footage. Detective Harlan, a tired-looking man with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much, visited us 3 times. Each time, Sophie gave polite, simple answers. Too simple. When he left, I noticed something strange, a faint red stain on her sleeve. "Sophie," I said carefully, "what's that?" She looked down, then smirked. "Ketchup. From dinner." But we hadn't had ketchup. I remember standing there, my pulse quickening, the unease spreading like a shadow. It wasn't proof, not yet. But it was the first tiny crack in the facade of our peaceful life. Over the next few days, that crack widened. Sophie became quieter, her phone always face down, her laughter forced. I found her clothes in the wash at 2 a.m., the water still pink-tinted when I checked. She said she'd spilled nail polish. I wanted to believe her, I really did, but a mother's instinct doesn't lie. Then one night, she came into the kitchen while I was washing dishes. Her eyes were red, her voice low. "Mom," she said, "if you knew I did something bad, really bad, would you still love me?" My heart froze. "What did you do, Sophie?" She didn't answer. She just looked down at her phone, then whispered, "I fixed something that couldn't be fixed." I didn't understand it then. Not until the next morning, when Detective Harlan came back, holding that same phone sealed in a plastic bag. Tyler's phone. He said it had been found in a creek half a mile from our house, wiped clean. No messages. No photos. Nothing but one last call, to Sophie Carson. And when I turned to look at my daughter, she didn't look scared. She looked defiant. That's when I realized, something had broken in her long before that night. And somehow, I hadn't noticed. Detective Harlan's words echoed through my head long after he left. "One last call, to your daughter." That night, sleep didn't come. Every creak of the house made me flinch. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the sealed evidence bag he'd left on the counter for signature, the one containing Tyler's phone. Its surface was cracked, mud-stained, silent, but to me, it screamed. Sophie was in her room. I could hear the faint hum of music through the wall, something calm and distant, like she didn't have a care in the world. I wanted to storm in and demand answers, but I didn't, because I was terrified of what she might say. When morning came, she was already dressed, hair tied up neatly, sipping coffee like any other school day. "Big day?" I asked, trying to sound normal. She smiled, that practiced, sharp smile. "Just algebra. You know, life's greatest tragedy." I watched her pack her bag and slip her phone inside. Her hands didn't tremble. Mine did. After she left, I called Daniel at work. "There's something going on with Sophie," I told him. "She's lying to us." He sighed, that long, weary sound of a man too tired to face more family drama. You're overreacting, Elaine. Teenagers lie. It's their job. She's not lying about curfew, Daniel, I snapped. She's lying about a dead boy. He didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was firm, final. Drop it. You'll make it worse. I hung up on him. At work, I couldn't focus. Every time a phone rang, my stomach lurched. Around noon, I got a text from Sophie. Don't worry about me. Everything's handled. Handled. That word felt wrong, clinical, like something from a crime report. After school, I waited in the car outside the building. Sophie spotted me instantly, her expression unreadable. She opened the door, slid in, and before I could speak, said, "You shouldn't come here." "Then tell me what's going on," I said quietly. She stared out the window. "You wouldn't understand. Try me." For a long time, she said nothing. Then, almost absently, she murmured, "Sometimes good people do bad things for the right reasons." The air between us went still. "Sophie," I whispered, "what did you do?" Her lips twitched into a bitter smile. "You always taught me to help people, right? Even if it means getting my hands dirty." Before I could respond, she opened the car door and walked away. That night, I searched her room. I know, a violation of trust, the one line I swore I'd never cross. But every instinct screamed that something terrible was coming. Under her mattress, I found a black hoodie, damp and reeking of river water. In the pocket, a small silver pendant with the initials T.R. Tyler Reed. The murdered boy. My legs gave out. I sat there on the floor, clutching the pendant like a relic from a nightmare. I thought about calling the police. I thought about Daniel. But when I imagined Sophie in handcuffs, pale and small and scared, I couldn't breathe. Instead, I washed the hoodie, sealed the pendant in a plastic bag, and hid it in the attic. When Sophie came home, I confronted her, carefully. "I need to know if you were with Tyler that night." She didn't deny it. She just looked at me, calm, almost pitying. "You wouldn't believe me even if I told you." "Try me." Her jaw tightened. "He hurt someone, Mom. He wasn't innocent." I froze. "What do you mean?" But she turned away, whispering, "It's better this way." For the next few days, I watched her like a hawk. She slept easily, ate normally, laughed with friends. But I could see it, the shift in her eyes. She wasn't the same. There was a hardness there now, something cold and deliberate. And then the first warning bell became impossible to ignore. A week after the murder, another student went missing, Emily Vargas, a friend of Tyler's. The police came again, asking if Sophie had seen her. She said no. So calmly, so convincingly, that even Harlan believed her. After he left, I found Sophie in the backyard, burning something in the fire pit. I ran out and grabbed the metal poker, scattering the ashes. Inside the flames were pages, fragments of printed texts, photos, something that looked like a receipt. "Sophie!" I shouted. "What are you doing?" She looked up at me, the firelight flickering across her face. "Cleaning up after people who don't know when to stop." My heart pounded. "You can't keep doing this. You're tampering with evidence." She tilted her head, eyes sharp as glass. "You're a nurse, Mom. You clean up messes all the time. What's the difference?" I wanted to scream, to grab her and shake her until the truth spilled out. But I didn't. Because behind her defiance, there was fear. Not of getting caught, but of something worse. That night, I locked the attic door and hid the key under my pillow. I sat awake until dawn, listening to the wind howl outside, wondering when love for your child stops being protection and starts being complicity. The next morning, Sophie came into the kitchen, poured herself coffee, and said softly, "Mom, you did the right thing." We both did. And for the first time, I realized she wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was offering reassurance. The following weeks blurred together, each day heavy with the weight of secrets. Every morning I'd watch Sophie eat her cereal, scrolling through her phone like nothing had changed. But I couldn't stop seeing the hoodie, the ashes, the missing girl's face on the news. The sound of the coffee machine became a metronome for my guilt. Daniel noticed my distance, but he mistook it for stress. "You're working too much," he said one night. "Take a few days off. Get some rest." I almost laughed. Rest. When every time I closed my eyes I saw Tyler's cracked phone, Sophie's calm face, the flames devouring whatever truth she was hiding. Detective Harlan came back. He always came back. He had that way of showing up unannounced, knocking twice, stepping inside before you could protest. His presence filled the house with static. He asked the same questions, phrased differently. Did Sophie ever mention Tyler? Did she seem upset after his death? Did she ever hang around the grocery store parking lot? Each time, I lied smoother than before. "No. She's just trying to focus on school." He'd nod, jot notes into his little book, then look at me with eyes that saw too much. Mrs. Carson, he said one afternoon, lowering his voice, I've been doing this job 25 years. Mothers always know. I smiled, brittle and forced. Then you already have your answer. After he left, I went upstairs and found Sophie sitting cross-legged on her bed, headphones on, laptop open. I asked what she was doing. Homework, she said. But the reflection on the screen told a different story. A video paused on a news clip about Emily Vargas, the missing girl. I reached for the laptop, but she slammed it shut. Don't, she said sharply. You'll just make it worse. Make what worse? Everything, she whispered. That night, Daniel and I fought. He said I was obsessed, that I was poisoning the house with paranoia. He didn't see the signs, didn't want to. She's fine, Elaine, he insisted. She's just going through something. Through something. I shouted. Daniel, there are 2 dead kids. She knew both of them. She's burning evidence in our backyard, and you want to pretend everything's fine? His jaw tightened. You need help. I laughed bitterly. You're right. I do. I need help protecting our daughter from whatever she's becoming. We didn't speak for 2 days after that. Isolation crept in like mold, subtle but poisonous. The neighbors stopped inviting us to their dinners. I could feel their eyes on us when Sophie walked by, whispers behind curtains, gossip spreading like smoke. The news said the police had persons of interest. No names, but everyone knew how to connect the dots. One afternoon, I found a flyer shoved under our door. In black marker, someone had written, "Your daughter knows what she did." I tore it up before Sophie could see. Or maybe I didn't want her to see it because I wasn't sure how she'd react, guilt or satisfaction. At work, I couldn't focus. I made mistakes. Miscounted medication doses. My supervisor noticed. Take some time off, she said gently. Family first. I didn't tell her that my family was the problem. Then came the night that shattered what was left of normalcy. Around midnight, I woke up to whispers. I thought it was the TV. Daniel sometimes fell asleep watching old westerns, but when I stepped into the hallway, the sound was coming from Sophie's room. I pushed the door open slightly. She was on the phone, voice low, urgent. No, I got rid of it, she said. I told you, no one's going to find it. Just stop calling me. Silence. Then, I said stop. She threw the phone onto the bed and pressed her palms to her face. I backed away, heart pounding, careful not to make a sound. The next morning, I asked about the call. She pretended not to know what I meant. You must have dreamt it, she said flatly. Later that day, I checked her phone when she was in the shower. The call history was wiped clean. Not a single recent number. That was when I realized Sophie wasn't scared anymore. She was in control. Every lie she told was smoother. Every gesture rehearsed. When Daniel tried to ground her for skipping class, she turned on the charm, made him laugh, kissed his cheek, and he forgot all about it. But when I tried to talk to her, she turned cold, distant. You're the one who taught me to survive, she said once, voice steady. Why are you mad that I learned? I wanted to scream that surviving and covering up a crime were not the same thing. But deep down, I understood what she meant. When Harlan came again, he brought something new, a folder. He laid it on the table between us. Inside was a photograph of tire tracks leading from the grocery store to the creek. The same pattern as your husband's truck, he said. I stared at the photo, my pulse thudding in my ears. Daniel wasn't there, I said automatically. He was home. Can you prove that? My throat went dry. When he left, I confronted Daniel. He looked genuinely confused. What are you talking about? I wasn't anywhere near that store. But Sophie, standing in the doorway, smiled faintly, like she knew something neither of us did. The house felt smaller after that, the air heavier. Every sound, the hum of the fridge, the wind against the windows, carried tension. Then one evening as I was locking up, Sophie said quietly, You know they'll never stop looking, right? You can't protect everyone forever. Her tone wasn't defiant. It was matter of fact. Like she'd already accepted the ending. I turned to her, trying to find the little girl I used to know, the one who collected seashells, who fell asleep in my lap during thunderstorms. But she was gone. In her place stood someone calm, calculating, unreadable. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just protecting her anymore. I was complicit. And the scariest part? I wasn't sure I regretted it. It was almost midnight when the truth began to unravel, not in one explosive moment, but in fragments, like shards of glass cutting through a fog I'd been walking in for months. Sophie had been quieter than usual that week. Detached. She spent hours in the attic, rummaging through boxes, claiming she was looking for old photos. When I went up to check on her, she quickly shut one of the boxes and smiled. Just organizing, she said. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Something inside me cracked that night. I needed to know what was in that box. So when she left for school the next morning, I went up there myself. I found it easily, a small blue plastic tub with a cracked lid. Inside, under a pile of crumpled papers, was a folder labeled in block letters, TR, private. My hands shook as I opened it. Photos. Dozens of them. Tyler Reed, the boy who had been murdered. Some were *TS from social media, others looked like they'd been taken secretly, in the school hallway, outside a coffee shop, even one near our driveway. Then there were printouts of messages. Text conversations between Sophie and Tyler. At first, they were friendly, teasing, flirtatious. Then darker. Tyler mocking her, threatening her, calling her names. And then the last few lines that made my blood run cold. Tyler, you're not gonna tell anyone. You liked it. Sophie, I said no. Tyler, no one will believe you. I sat there frozen, the room spinning. The murder. The phone. The evidence she destroyed. It wasn't about hiding a random crime. It was about erasing her trauma. My daughter hadn't covered for a K***lure. She'd covered for herself. The realization hit like lightning. Painful, illuminating, irreversible. She hadn't told us because she knew Daniel wouldn't believe her. Because maybe I hadn't given her reason to. When she came home that afternoon, I was still sitting at the kitchen table, the folder open before me. She stopped in the doorway, eyes narrowing. You went through my things. I had to, I said softly. You should have told me, Sophie. Her lips trembled, just slightly. Told you what? That he hurt me? That nobody would care. I would have cared. I cried. I do care. She laughed, a hollow, broken sound. You think it's that simple? You think people believe girls like me when they accuse boys like him? He was everyone's golden boy. Football, scholarships, fake smiles. I had no proof, just bruises and nightmares. I wanted to reach for her, but she stepped back. So I made sure he couldn't hurt anyone else, she whispered. The room went silent except for the sound of rain against the window. I stared at her, at my little girl who had once cried over scraped knees and bad grades. What did you do? I asked, barely breathing. Her eyes met mine, steady, unflinching. I met him behind the store. He wanted to talk things out. He laughed when I said I'd go to the police. He grabbed me again. So I hit him. He fell. He wasn't moving. She swallowed hard. I panicked. I called someone. He helped me move him. I didn't mean for him to die. I pressed my shaking hands to my mouth. Who did you call? Her silence was the answer. Daniel. When she finally spoke, her voice was fragile. He told me it was an accident, that no one needed to know. He took his truck. Said he'd handle it. But he made me promise to destroy the phone. My breath caught. Your father knew? She nodded. He said he was protecting me. The floor felt like it vanished beneath me. Daniel, the man who had scolded me for suspecting her, who had called me paranoid, had been lying all along. That night, I confronted him. He didn't deny it. He didn't even look surprised. I did what any father would, he said, his voice calm, almost cold. He attacked our daughter. I wasn't going to let her life be ruined by some court that wouldn't care what really happened. I stared at him, horrified. You let her carry that guilt. You watched me tear myself apart thinking she was a monster. He slammed his glass down on the counter. And you would have done what? Turned her in? Let her rot in juvenile detention for defending herself. I would have told the truth. He shook his head slowly. The truth doesn't save people, Elaine. It destroys them. We didn't speak for hours after that. The house was silent, except for the storm outside, thunder rolling like judgment. Upstairs, I found Sophie sitting on her bed, staring at the wall. I know you hate me now, she said quietly. I sat beside her. I don't hate you. Her eyes flicked to mine, uncertain. I hate that you thought you had to handle it alone, I whispered. That your father made you believe silence was the only way. She nodded, tears spilling over. It doesn't matter anymore. They'll find out eventually. No, I said firmly. They won't. Not if I can help it. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and for the first time in months, she didn't look scared. She looked like a soldier who had finally met her commander. That night, while Daniel slept, I took the folder, the pendant, and the remains of the burned papers. I sealed them in a box and drove out to the cliffs by the sound. The rain soaked through my coat as I tossed it all into the waves. It was gone. The truth, the guilt, the evidence, buried beneath black water. When I got home, Sophie was waiting in the dark kitchen. Did you get rid of it? She asked. I nodded. She exhaled, relief, sorrow, and something like peace. Then she said softly, "You did the right thing, Mom." And for the first time since it all began, I believed her. But deep inside, I knew, the sea doesn't keep secrets forever. The sea took everything that night, every photograph, every shred of paper, every proof of what had been done. But it couldn't take the guilt that seeped into me, filling every quiet moment with a weight I couldn't wash away. For a week, I moved through life on autopilot. I went to work, smiled at patients, made dinner, all while checking my rearview mirror every few seconds, convinced flashing lights would appear behind me. Sophie tried to act normal. She laughed at breakfast, texted friends, even asked Daniel for help with a project. But beneath her calm, I saw it, the alertness of a fox in a trap, waiting for the hunter's return. And the hunter did return. Detective Harlan came on a Thursday. Rain again. It always rained when he came. He stood at the door, water dripping from his coat, holding a new folder. "Sorry to drop in unannounced, Mrs. Carson. Just a few follow-ups." His tone was polite, but his eyes were sharper than before. Watching me. Measuring me. I offered coffee, trying to keep my hands from trembling. He flipped open the folder. Inside were photographs, muddy footprints, tire imprints, and one I hadn't seen before, a shoe print, small, distinct, found near the creek where Tyler's phone was recovered. "Women's size 7, he said. "Thought maybe it could help narrow our search." My mouth went dry. "I wore a 7. "That's unfortunate coincidence," I managed to say. He nodded, but I could tell he didn't buy it. Coincidences have a way of piling up in this case. Sophie came downstairs halfway through his questioning. She greeted him sweetly, her hair perfectly brushed, a polite smile on her face. She played innocent so well it scared me. "Detective," she said, "are we suspects again?" "Just routine," he said. She tilted her head. "Then maybe stop treating it like an interrogation." He smiled at her defiance, but there was steel in his gaze. "You're a clever girl, Sophie. I hope you're clever enough not to make this harder on yourself." When he finally left, Sophie turned to me. "He's not going to stop." "No," I admitted. "He won't. Then we make sure he never finds anything." It was the first time she said, "we." Not I. Not me. Us. That night, I hid my muddy shoes in the garbage bin, under layers of coffee grounds and vegetable peels. Sophie watched silently, her arms crossed. "Mom," she said softly, "you're getting good at this." I didn't know if it was a compliment or a warning. Over the next few days, I began anticipating Harlan's moves. I requested copies of the case reports under the pretext of community concern. I learned where evidence was stored, what was still missing, what was under review. I was methodical, careful, detached. Daniel noticed, of course. "You're scaring me," he said one night. "You're acting like one of them." "One of who?" I asked quietly. "The people you used to patch up at the ER. The ones who lied to your face while you stitched them back together." His voice broke. "You used to be the person who saved lives, Elaine. Now you're just trying to erase one." I didn't respond. Because he wasn't wrong. The next morning, I went to the precinct. I told Harlan I wanted to help, that I'd remembered something new, something small but maybe useful. I pretended to cooperate, to rebuild his trust. It worked. He let me glance at a few reports while he took a call. That's when I saw it, a lab note. A new piece of evidence, a hair recovered from Tyler's jacket. Blonde. Female. DNA results pending. Sophie's hair was dark. Mine wasn't. I felt the ground tilt beneath me. When I got home, I locked myself in the bathroom, stared into the mirror, and whispered, "You're running out of time." That evening, Sophie and I sat on the porch. The sun was setting, bleeding orange across the horizon. For a few moments, it almost felt normal. Then she said, "He's getting close, isn't he?" "Yes. Then we have to get ahead of him." Her voice was steady, deliberate. I looked at her, my daughter, 16 years old, speaking like a strategist. "What do you mean?" I asked. She turned to me, eyes glinting in the dying light. "You said once that the best defense is a good offense. So we give them something else to find." Over the next few days, I watched her plan unfold. She knew the system better than I did, how rumors spread, how speculation twisted facts. She started feeding small stories to classmates, pretending to remember seeing Tyler arguing with someone else. She dropped hints about Emily, the missing girl, suggesting she had been jealous, erratic. By the time the gossip reached the police, it sounded almost credible. Harlan even came back to ask follow-up questions about Emily's temper, her fixation with Tyler. Sophie played the grieving friend perfectly. "And me." I nodded along. Every lie was a brick in the wall we built around her. Around us. But walls don't last forever. 2 nights later, I woke up to headlights flooding through the living room window. A car had stopped outside. Then another. Blue and red lights flashed silently. My pulse spiked. The doorbell rang. Daniel came down the hall, bleary-eyed. Sophie appeared behind him, calm as ever. When I opened the door, Harlan stood there, holding an envelope. "Mrs. Carson," he said, "we got the DNA results." The room tilted again. "It's a familial match," he said. "Female relative of Sophie's. Likely maternal." Daniel turned to me, confusion giving way to horror. "Elaine." I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Harlan stepped forward, his voice steady. "You didn't just protect her, did you? You helped cover it up." Sophie's hand slipped into mine. Her grip was warm, firm, unflinching. "She didn't do anything wrong," she said softly. "I did." For a second, I thought she was going to confess. But then she smiled. Small, cold, perfect. "And you'll never prove it." Harlan's jaw tightened. "We'll see." When he left, Daniel stared at me like I was a stranger. "What did you do?" "Everything I had to," I said quietly. He turned away. "You've lost yourself, Elaine." Maybe I had. Or maybe, for the first time, I'd found the part of me capable of surviving. That night, I lay awake, listening to the rain. I knew this wasn't over. It was a game now. Me and Harlan, mother and daughter, truth and survival. And I was done playing defense. I didn't sleep after the DNA results. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house breathe, Daniel turning in bed beside me, Sophie's faint footsteps upstairs. The quiet felt dangerous now, heavy with things unsaid. By morning, the world had shifted again. News vans were parked on the street, journalists hovering like vultures. The words "new evidence" and "familial link" bled from every headline. We weren't anonymous anymore. We were a story. Daniel packed a bag. "I can't do this," he said, avoiding my eyes. "I need space. Time to think." He was gone before I could answer. Sophie watched him leave from the window. "He'll tell them," she said flatly. "He's not like us." "Stop," I snapped. "He's your father." Her expression didn't change. "You still think that means something?" The house felt emptier after he left. The silence echoed off the walls. Every shadow looked like a camera flash. Every knock at the door made me flinch. That evening, as I stood at the sink, Sophie came in, holding her phone. "They're saying they're getting a warrant," she said. "For the house." I froze. "When?" "Tomorrow morning." The clock ticked loudly on the wall. I dried my hands, my voice calm though my pulse hammered in my ears. "Then we don't wait." We spent the night preparing. Sophie gathered everything that could connect her: clothes, old phones, notebooks, even the pendant I thought I'd thrown away but she'd secretly kept. I collected cleaning supplies, bleach, trash bags, gloves. It felt mechanical, almost surgical. I wasn't a nurse anymore. I was an accomplice performing triage on our own lives. Around midnight, she looked at me across the kitchen table. "Are you sure you want to do this?" "No," I said. "But I will." We worked in silence. I scrubbed the floors until my hands ached. Sophie burned what we couldn't clean. The air filled with the acrid smell of smoke and chemicals. At one point, she reached for my hand. "Mom," she whispered, "you're not scared anymore." I met her eyes. "I am. I've just learned to use it." By dawn, the house looked spotless. Too spotless. We showered, changed clothes, opened windows to let the smoke drift out. I brewed coffee, pretending it was an ordinary morning. Then came the knock. 3 sharp raps. Authority in every sound. When I opened the door, Harlan stood there, flanked by 2 officers. He held the warrant in one hand, his eyes scanning my face for cracks. "Mrs. Carson," he said politely, "you know why we're here." I nodded. "Of course." They moved through the house like ghosts, opening closets, checking drains, lifting rugs. Sophie sat on the couch, calm as marble, scrolling through her phone. I made coffee for the officers, smiled, played the perfect host. But Harlan wasn't fooled. He lingered near the back door, eyes narrowing at the faint smell of burnt plastic. "What's that?" he asked. "Dinner disaster," I said smoothly. "You ever burn lasagna at 2 a.m.? He didn't laugh. He just kept looking, at the spotless counters, the 2 clean floors, the faint pink line on my wrist where bleach had burned my skin. Finally, he turned to me. "You're a mother, Elaine. I get it. But this isn't going to end the way you think." Something in his tone made my stomach turn. He knew. When they left, Sophie exhaled shakily. "He's bluffing," she said. "No," I said. "He's waiting." And I was right. That night, I got a call. Not from the police, from Daniel. His voice was trembling. "They know, Elaine," he said. They found tire marks near the cliff. They're matching them to my truck. My blood ran cold. Where are you? Outside the station, he whispered. They want me to come in. I can't. Then the line went dead. I knew what I had to do. I grabbed my coat and keys, but Sophie blocked the door. Don't, she said. If he talks, it's over. I can stop this, I insisted. I'll tell them it was me. They'll believe it. She shook her head violently. No, you'll go to prison. I won't lose you too. Sophie, please, she whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. Let me fix this. Before I could respond, she ran. Out the door, into the storm. I followed her, heart pounding, headlights slicing through the rain. I found her at the cliffs, the same place I'd thrown the box. Daniel's truck was there, engine idling. Sophie stood by the edge, shouting at him, her hair whipping in the wind. You told them. You promised. I didn't. Daniel shouted back. I had to tell someone the truth. Sophie stepped closer. You ruined everything. Stop. I screamed, running toward them. She turned, her face streaked with rain and fury. I did this for you, Mom. For us. And he's going to destroy it. Daniel reached for her, but she jerked away, too close to the edge. The ground crumbled beneath her feet. For one terrifying second, she teetered, then I lunged, grabbing her arm. Hold on. I cried. Her eyes met mine, terrified, desperate. And behind her, Daniel moved, grabbing my hand, pulling us both back. We collapsed in the mud, gasping. The three of us, broken, soaked, silent. The storm howled around us, the world falling apart. Finally, Daniel whispered, It's over. But Sophie shook her head slowly. No, Dad. It's just beginning. When we got home, the police were already waiting. Harlan stood in the driveway, coat dripping, expression unreadable. You should have called me, he said quietly. I met his gaze. You should have stopped looking. He looked at Sophie, then back at me. You've crossed too many lines, Elaine. There's no coming back. I didn't answer. Because deep down, I knew he was right. That night, as they questioned Daniel inside, Sophie and I sat on the porch. The rain had stopped, the world eerily calm. She leaned her head on my shoulder. We'll be okay, she whispered. I didn't have the heart to tell her that okay was gone forever. Because sometimes love doesn't save you. Sometimes, it damns you. The days that followed felt like living underwater, every sound muffled, every movement slow, heavy, unreal. After the night at the cliffs, everything unraveled faster than I could control. Daniel's truck was impounded. The police took our computers, our phones, every piece of paper they could find. The house was gutted, emotionally and literally. Harlan came back one last time, this time with no warrant in his hand. He didn't need one. I wanted to give you a chance to tell the truth, he said quietly, sitting at our kitchen table. But you never took it. I looked at him across the scarred wood surface where, weeks ago, Tyler's phone had once lain. Would it have mattered? He sighed. Sometimes it does. I almost laughed. Not in this world. He didn't argue. He just looked tired, older than I'd ever seen him. I don't think you're evil, Elaine. I think you're a mother who made a terrible choice and kept doubling down. But at some point, protection becomes destruction. He left without handcuffs, without threats, just that final sentence hanging in the air. After that, everything went quiet. Too quiet. Daniel didn't come home. He was cooperating with the investigation, they said. Cooperating. That word sounded like betrayal. I imagined him in a small gray room, exhausted, finally letting the truth spill out to a stranger because he couldn't carry it anymore. Sophie barely spoke for days. She went to school, came home, ate dinner, disappeared into her room. No laughter, no rebellion, just silence. It was almost worse than her defiance had been. I tried to pretend life was moving forward, grocery shopping, paying bills, folding laundry, but beneath the surface, everything had stopped. Then came the letter. A simple white envelope, postmarked from a nearby correctional facility. Daniel's handwriting. I read it 3 times before the words made sense. I told them everything. I had to. Maybe they'll go easier on you and Sophie. I'm sorry, Elaine. I thought I was protecting her. I thought we could fix it. But we can't fix what's already broken. The paper shook in my hands. He'd signed it, always, D. No goodbye, just resignation. That night, I sat on the porch until dawn, watching the fog roll over the street. Every house was dark except ours. I wondered how many other mothers were awake, holding secrets like grenades in their hands, waiting for them to go off. When the arrest warrant finally came, it wasn't for me. It was for Daniel. Accessory after the fact. Evidence tampering. Obstruction of justice. He pled guilty to spare us. To spare her. Sophie didn't cry when she heard. She just stared at the floor and whispered, "He wasn't supposed to take the fall." I touched her shoulder. "He did it because he loves you." She looked up at me, her expression unreadable. Love makes people stupid. For a long time, we said nothing. Then she asked quietly, "Are we safe now?" I thought about the files at the precinct, the copies of every interview, every photo, every statement we'd ever made. "No," I said honestly. "But we're still here." Months passed. The media moved on. Another tragedy took over the headlines. The world forgot about the Carsons. But forgetting isn't the same as healing. Sophie graduated in the spring. No fanfare, no relatives in the crowd. Just me, sitting alone in the back row, watching her walk across the stage. When she turned to look at me, she smiled. It wasn't pride. It was survival. After the ceremony, she hugged me. "We did it," she whispered. I wanted to say, "At what cost?" Instead, I just said, "Yes." That summer, we moved. A small coastal town up north, quiet and gray. I told people my husband had died in an accident, that it was just the two of us now. They believed it. People always believe the version of the story that hurts them least. Sophie started painting, dark, beautiful things. Storms, cliffs, faces half submerged in water. I started volunteering at a clinic, patching up strangers who didn't ask questions. We built a new life, one cautious smile at a time. But some nights, when the wind howls off the sea, I still wake up thinking I hear tires on wet gravel. And sometimes, I swear I see a shadow standing by the water, waiting. Maybe it's my guilt. Maybe it's what's left of the truth, refusing to drown. Because the truth doesn't stay buried forever. It lingers. It whispers. It grows roots in the quiet places you thought were safe. Sophie doesn't talk about that night anymore. She doesn't need to. We both know it lives under our skin, beating quietly like a second heart. A few weeks ago, she showed me a new painting. It was of a woman standing at the edge of a cliff, waves crashing below, her reflection in the water shaped like fire. "What do you think?" she asked. I stared at it for a long time before answering. "It's beautiful," I said softly. "And terrifying." She smiled faintly. "Just like us." For a moment, I saw the little girl she used to be, the one who brought me seashells, who believed the world could still be good. Then the moment passed. I hung the painting in the hallway, right where the morning light hits it. A reminder. A warning. A confession. Sometimes I stand there, coffee in hand, tracing the brushstrokes. I tell myself that what we did was for survival. That it was mercy. That any mother would have done the same. But deep down, I know the truth. We didn't just destroy evidence that night. We destroyed ourselves. And even now, when I look at Sophie, standing tall and untouchable, I still feel that terrible flicker of pride. Because she learned exactly what I taught her. How to survive in a world that doesn't forgive.